Welcome into the Big Little Podcast, everybody. I'm your host, Patrick Previty. That is Andrew Greig. We are close to the finals. We thought we were going to have the finals matchup set last night, but the Pacers were not able to close out the Knicks. They lost 94 to 111, and now the series goes back to Indiana, right?
Yep.
So was there something that the Knicks figured out, or was this just one game off or one game away from the inevitable?
No, I think it's probably 1 or 2 games away from the inevitable. I don't think that the Knicks are going to be able to come back 3-1, especially because the Pacers, although they essentially got blown out in this game, everybody had a terrible game from the Pacers' perspective. Tyrese Haliburton didn't really show up the way he needed to after his triple-double performance. He doesn't even get to double figures in this game. And then on the opposite side, the players that you need to step up for the Knicks did. Jalen Brunson had a good game. Karl-Anthony Towns had a good game. And then I really we haven't talked about it since it happened, but I really like the insertion of Mitchell Robinson into the starting lineup. He's been giving them great stuff off the bench the whole time. And Josh Hart gets to be more of an offensive threat when he's not on the floor with 4 other people who also need the ball in their hands. So I think that he's becoming more he can step into more of a natural role coming off the bench, and is just always an energy guy. So it gives a little bit just more of an emphasis on their bench, which they haven't had in the past, especially not in these playoffs or maybe all season long.
Yeah, no, definitely. They haven't had it all season long. It feels like I'm glad that they finally were able, and it sucks that it took this long for them to actually give their bench a shot or to really try to play with some of the lineups. But that seems to, if there's one thing that would keep this Knicks team alive through game 6 and potentially winning game 7, it would be the fact that they made this move to give their bench just a couple more minutes here, or more minutes rather than 0. Just being able to pull back some of the minutes of some of their starters, I think, is just generally helpful, especially when they're out there on defense and everything like that. I think it really helps those guys. And then, as you mentioned, giving Mitchell Robinson that starting slot, I think has been really helpful. You mentioned this was an off game for the Indiana Pacers.
Yeah. Well, to that
I didn't know if that was actually, honestly, just being straight up, I didn't know if you said that before or if you had said that in your opening thing, but I wanted to get to how poorly or how off this team was as well last night.
No, yeah. I mean, I mentioned the opening thing, but yeah, a lot of their key players played at least shot from the field pretty terribly. I mean, in their starting lineup, 3 of their players shot a combined 5 for 15 and then 6 for 23 between Aaron Nesmith, Andrew Nembhard, and Tyrese Haliburton. And Aaron Nesmith has kind of grown up in the series and throughout the course of this playoffs into one of he's always been a really good perimeter defender, but one of the better players on this team. He only had 3 points in this game. And then Tyrese Haliburton, there's been talks about him becoming a superstar. And in my opinion, this is what separates superstars from just star players or really good players. The fact that you can have 8 points in playoff games, and he's had single digits in playoff games. He had 9 points in the Cleveland Cavaliers series, and I think one of the closeout games as well. If you're not getting superstar level hate, you're not a superstar. If this happens to LeBron in the playoffs, even right now, even the fact that he's 40 plus, he's not. If he's dropping 9 in a playoff game or 8 in a playoff game, people are going to rip into him for it. If Anthony Edwards does this, if a lot of other quote unquote stars do this, if Nikola Jokic had an 8-point game and close that game in the playoffs, everybody would be ripping into him. I think that's what separates superstars from just really good players and star players. The fact that he can be in the minus 23, shoot for 2 for 7, and only have 8 points, and I think that's the separator for me, at least in my opinion.
So okay, yeah, I'll get to the Pacers team first. They were off last night, and they didn't have their main guy working, and a couple of different players had some off shooting nights. It is what it is. We'll see if they can close it out here in game 6. I think that they still will be able to. The Tyrese Haliburton thing is interesting because we talked about this the last time we were on, and I felt like you made a distinction with the superstar to the star player, and it had more to do with the notoriety, who would know who, rather than, and the criticism certainly comes with it. But I feel like there was an extra group of stars like Ant, SGA, Jokic, that are very known. Probably I would say bordering the superstar level. Jokic, I think, would be a superstar, in all honesty. I mean, not the big box office draw that you might see from a casual, but he's anywhere in between that, right? But I feel like you lump those guys together, but in the previous video when we talked about it, you drew a line, and I feel like if we lump them together, I do think Tyrese Haliburton is on that, is in that realm, and you can add Luka and other players like that in it too.
I I personally just don't think so. I mean, I think I'm doing that because there is only a small group of people that like the example that I gave was that like your grandma would know if like you just said the name on like the if you said LeBron's name or Kevin Durant's name, they'd probably like people who don't watch basketball. It's like kind of that category that exceeds that, but that is like just too small of a group of player. I think that the fact that like actual individual performances in basketball needs to like fit into it a little bit more. And I think just in general, in terms of like best basketball players on the planet, maybe Superstar should encapsulate like that list of names I talked about, and then like the top 6 or 7 basketball players in the world. And I don't think that title should be like handed out to like almost anybody else. And I don't think Tyrese Haliburton falls into that category like whatsoever at this point. I mean,
Halliburton
like
is what, like not top 10 or top 15? Or
I
is he right in the middle of 10 and 15?
I don't have like a list in front of me, but I definitely don't think he's top 10.
I think he's bordering on it. He's getting really close to it. Like, I understand like where you're coming from with the criticism part, but I think that that's about to turn really quickly. I think we saw it with Anthony Edwards like this year a little bit, where he made a a really solid run last year and got to the conference finals and kind of sputtered out, and then now this year he had a lot more like lesser playoff games or playoff performances than we would have expected. Team kind of finished in the same realm. I think he's getting more criticism. I just think that it just hasn't turned just yet, just because of like the age for Tyrese Haliburton. But I definitely think he's got to be right around there, because like this team is one game away from the NBA Finals. Like that
What do you mean?
is.
What do you mean the age? Aren't they like pretty close to similar in age? And like, didn't Tyrese Haliburton make the conference finals last year too, and kind of sputtered out?
Well, yeah, but I mean that was against the Boston Celtics, like an undisputably great team, and I would say like he is getting some level of hate right now. I mean, for some players, it just comes at different moments. Like Anthony Edwards, I feel like has been a staple, like for face of the league kind of conversations for a while. I mean, talking about Baby Mike, like comparing him to Kobe and Michael Jordan, like those comparisons came before the playoff run. So I feel like he's been kind of in that conversation. It's just about when you enter the conversation, like everybody just thought the Pacers team last year was a massive overachievement. It was kind of
Yeah,
like the Trae Young to the conference finals kind of thing.
I think the Timberwolves kind of fit into that category as well last year.
I mean, but
They weren't supposed
not
to
as
even
much though.
they weren't supposed to beat the Suns in that series.
I mean, they still had a really good team. Like I'd have to like look back exactly at like who was
They were
picking
not
who.
favored in the Suns matchup or
They
the
weren't
Nuggets
favored in
matchup.
any of the matchups this year. Like it doesn't even matter if you're favored or not necessarily. It's just about what kind of conversation you're in. They weren't favored in the Lakers series this year.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. That shows that like he can rise to like past the level of expectations. I think that Anthony Edwards run last year gets a little bit blurred, maybe because of the run that he's having this year and it not being as great. But man, that was like something like they were not supposed to get out of that Nuggets series, and even if they were supposed to beat that Suns team, the way they did it, they dominated that series like in and out. So I mean, I think we're losing perspective a little bit. I definitely think Tyrese Haliburton. I dogged on him a little bit, like a lot of it, but he made the third team All NBA. He's definitely one of the best players in the NBA, especially towards the second half of the season. The first half of the season he wasn't very good, but in the second half he stepped it up. He like got his team to where they needed to be at. But I just think that there is a level that he hasn't quite reached yet, where I understand that scoring isn't his main like go-to thing, but he's not going to be the one to like take over a game individually, like take over a series individually and win them that series. I feel like the supporting cast has like helped a lot. In game one, you had the Aaron Nesmith game. Pascal Siakam has had a couple of good games throughout the series. I feel like he's one of the best players in the league, but he doesn't fit into that category for me just yet.
Yeah, it's just not his game, like you said, though. Like I will say this, like, and he does, I feel like sometimes need to be more aggressive, because we see him in late game scenarios try like take that final shot and be really aggressive. I hate to see a box score for a lot of like if I have like my number one player shoot only 7 shots in the game, I feel like that is like a disservice to the team, no matter what kind of game or style he plays. And like this game did, get out of hand a little bit, but like I hate to see that. I want him to be more aggressive, but like at the end of the day, that's not really his game. So like he deserves a certain amount of criticism, but I don't know if that is exactly what would be keeping him out of that kind of conversation where it's the top stars in the league, 10 to 15 range. Like, I mean, I think he's pretty solidified right around there. Obviously, I asked you about that. I don't have the list right off the top of my head. I have a point guard list that we're going to get to later, but like, I don't have that list right in front of me. I think the point about Anthony Edwards is interesting, you know, that you made, because like you're kind of swaying me a little bit, but still, like, I think the criticism's coming, and I think there are enough people saying this 8-point game like has been enough of a drop off from the previous game that it's certainly sparking some people to have a conversation about it.
There are some like pretty drastic swings with Haliburton's game too, because one game like he'll drop 30 and a triple double with no turnovers, and like even in the last series, like I've already mentioned this like 2 times already, but like in the last series versus the Cavs, like you like in closeout games, like you need your best player to like take more than a couple shots, have more than just a couple points, and he's had single digit points in 2 closeout games in the last 2 series. I just think that needs to improve. Like if a bad game for him is going to start being like 15 points and like 8 assists, like that is when you start getting to the level of this guy's different. But like that's like a Jokic bad game. But like I think those 2 players are in 2 different categories right now. I'm not lumping in Nikola Jokic with Tyrese Haliburton right now. Like they aren't in the same conversation to me.
Well, yeah, I think that there can be like you could be in the same ballpark, but not in the same conversation. Like I feel like nobody's in the conversation with Jokic right now. Like I would have to remove a lot of other players from that realm. I mean, maybe that's the case. I'm trying to go off of, you got superstar, then the stars, and that's Jokic and like Giannis and other really, really good players that have had like playoff defining moments, maybe rings and stuff like that. And then I got like my other batch. And I feel like that other batch is in the same ballpark / conversation, kind of bleeds in. But I feel like Tyrese Haliburton's in that next like little class. If I'm going based off of like superstar, your definition, and then going down from that. The thing about the closeout games is interesting, because I feel like it would be a little bit different if the closeout games were games 6 and 7, but it just so happens that the closeouts are in game 5. So it's just like, or games, 4 or 5. And it's like, it's less impactful. Like if it's earlier on in the series, like they've still taken care of everybody that they faced in the Eastern Conference. So I'm less inclined to really look at that stat and be concerned.
Yeah, and unless this goes south for the Pacers, and then it's like, I don't think
could be
it's
a completely different conversation in 2 games for sure.
Yeah, 100%. I think we've also lost the whole point of the segment about the Knicks staying alive. I mean, great game for the Knicks. I don't think it's going to happen, but I mean, I just want to see a little bit more out of Tyrese Haliburton always. It feels like he's a little too passive at times, which is his game. But like you were saying, like 7 shots in a closeout game, and I understand it got out of hand like relatively quickly. But I mean, like you were saying, it feels just like a disservice when there's 4 or 5 other guys on the same team, players off the bench that are shooting more shots than your best player.
Yeah, we did lose the plot a little bit there, but I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it because I feel like that's a huge thing. I mean, if Tyrese Haliburton comes out in game 6 and balls out, I mean, I do think that's probably it for the Knicks. I think it takes him and unlocks everybody else. So, I mean, we'll see. Jalen Brunson's been amazing this series as well. So we'll have to just, and Karl Anthony Towns been really good this series too. Okay.